next?
What they're saying now is the phone is ringing off the hook. These trading partners are calling the White House claims the president's is, that he's having conversations with Japan and other countries, and they want to make.
I've heard the opposite today. I mean, I talked to sort of the former national security types who advise big banks. They said the opposite is true, that no foreign leader wants to talk to Donald Trump because they don't trust him.
We're picking up on what Steph just said. I think there's probably truth to that. You just look at how our alliances have shifted over the last couple of months and how close European nations have become, how close that alliance has become between Europe and Canada, for instance, the UK and Canada once again. Look, I think that if you were to tease out what the White House is saying, that the phone is ringing off the hook, why, given what we've seen here, would you have any confidence that this is a White House and a U.S. Trade Representative's office and a Commerce Department that's equipped at this point to work on the types of deals in the kind of minutia that they require? What we were promised at the beginning of this administration is the Trade Representative, the Commerce Department, they were going to take an extremely close look at all of these bilateral trade agreements and to come up with numbers befitting each of these relationships that would be reciprocal tariffs. Use quotation fingers. They're not. Even going back to Smoot-Hawley in the 1930s, that took a year and a half for Congress to come up with what those levels were going to be. And we're talking about a global trade picture that was dramatically different from the one that we have today. Much smaller, much less intricate. We're to believe now that 50-plus countries are going to be trying at this moment in time to renegotiate all of these deals. It is a mammoth, if not Sisyphean, task for these countries to undertake right now.
Here's what should scare you. The fact that Elon Musk is spending his days posting videos of Milton Friedman talking about how bad tariffs are. The fact that you have Elon Musk and Peter Navarro sort of sparring in public, and the likes of Bill Ackman, okay, a hedge fund manager who was a huge outspoken supporter of Donald Trump. Rather, on dialing into the White House, which I'm sure he's got the phone number to do, he's now lobbying the president via tweet like, thank you, Mr. President. You know the whole entire country thinks you're smart and fantastic and really good at golf, and the tariffs on their face are a good idea. But here's what you need to do. The fact that you're seeing major business people plead with the president over Twitter in hopes that an aide in the White House will print out Bill Ackman's tweet, walk into the Oval Office and read it to him. That's the environment that we're in. So when you're wondering why the markets are so skittish, that's the level of confidence that they have. And if you can't have confidence in what our policies are, then what can you believe in?
Well, I guess my question for you is, how does it end?
Listen, the White House would like us to believe that this is a short-term pain, that we, even short-term recession, but we're going to start to improve things over time. They're going to be able to refinance our debt, which is a huge amount, which is coming due in the next 2 years. How's this going to end? Right now, people are crossing their fingers and praying, honestly, that the White House can come up with some cockamamie short-term wins for the president to save face so they can be done with these tariffs.
So this is what I heard as well. They're looking for the hostage taker who's taken the global economy hostage to find a dignity-saving off-ramp.
Correct.
And that is what the entire future of the global economy hinges on?
Correct.
Well, to pick up on that, I mean, I think if you look at the market moves that we saw today, there was, and it was before the weekend as well, they're looking for where those off-ramps are and is the gate open. And what we had the president and his team of advisors doing over the course of the weekend, and the president doing just a few moments ago in the Oval Office, is putting that gate down and saying it's not there. So again, if you look at what the Dow did today, if you look at that kind of green Christmas tree this morning when it did go into the green because of this erroneous tweet, it was that hunger for
Whose erroneous tweet was it?
It was somebody had clipped Kevin Hassett, the president's economic advisor, suggesting that maybe the White House would be open to a 90-day pause, the likes of which that Bill Ackman had suggested. The White House very quickly, in a comment to CNBC, shut that down and said that's not the case. But it was able to live and breathe in that moment long enough that investors had this renewed sense of optimism that maybe cooler heads were going to prevail, that exit ramp was going to be open. And as I said, once again, the White House kind of shut that down. And I think that what Wall Street wants here is certainty and clarity about what the path forward is. And more than that, wants to know that maybe there is a way for this to end in somewhat dramatic fashion.
Can I draw one comparison for you? Compare this to 2008. The weekend leading into Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, what was the government doing? They were huddled up figuring out how are we going to save the United States. And you saw trading desks at every bank rushing to the office on that Sunday night. Last night, that Sunday night, traders were rushing to the office as the futures market was opening, figuring out what they were going to do. What was our government doing this weekend? Donald Trump was golfing in Florida. So while the government was trying to save America in 2008.
Yeah.
What we're experiencing right now is the government inducing it, saying, well, time to take your medicine, boys and girls.
Well, and this comparison was drawn for me as well. Someone said your old boss was viewed as a partner in trying, and that George W. Bush had Barack Obama and John McCain and Nancy Pelosi at the White House. One of those two men would be the next president. Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House. And that they were trying to avoid the most cataclysmic economic catastrophe. And the difference here is that they have created a cataclysmic economic catastrophe that rivals that one.
And that's why the market is moving so dramatically, because beneath the tariffs, it's a healthy economy. Okay, in 2008, it wasn't a healthy economy, right? Like beneath the surface was a disaster, and you didn't know how far it was going to spread. Now, you take these tariffs away, and yes, we've got a fiscal cliff issue, we've got a net deficit issue, but we are a million miles away from a financial crisis. You saw the jobs number on Friday. It is A-OK. So the reason the market is hanging on every possible tweet that Kevin Hassett may have said is because once you take tariffs off the table, things are OK.
Just imagine this boiler room as well, if there were to be one. Everyone has a different perspective on what's happening here and what President Trump thinks. And there is a kind of unanimous level of deference to the president. It's up to him if we're going to negotiate. He's going to decide who we negotiate with. You go back, rewind the tape to last week, you had Howard Lutnick saying maybe he's up to open a negotiation, maybe he's not. Same thing with Scott Bessent, same thing with Kevin Hassett. I think nobody knows really what the president thinks. There is this remarkable level of self-awareness we didn't have in the first Trump term, I think, which is nobody dares to speak or guess what the president wants to do. There's an awareness that it is up to him, but it kind of renders useless the kind of atmosphere that you're talking about, where you could have an economic team in one place with what? All of these people wondering sort of, again, where are the off-ramps going to be or how's this going to work out? Someone
made the point that the Jeffrey Goldberg joined group chat about striking the Houthis is the policy analog that smart people should be looking at, that there is no principles process. They didn't go and look at targeted tariffs. He wanted to do a performative press conference and someone made him props. In the same way, he greenlit a strike. And J.D. Vance was the only one on the group chat trying to slow it down or sort of ingest any sort of policy deliberations. How much are business leaders becoming students of the last 10 years of Trump?
It's why they're hanging on to the hope that Scott Bessent might even be in the room. And even though they're not saying Scott Bessent is the great savior, they know that he actually has a deep understanding of markets. Okay? Howard Lutnick is a hugely successful guy, but where he comes from is Cantor Fitzgerald. Cantor Fitzgerald is a broker's broker. As one hedge fund manager described it to me today, I used to sell bonds for a living to hedge funds, and so I was maybe BSing one person on the end of the phone. A broker's broker is lying to both ends of the phone. And so you have a person who's never actually taken principal risk, who doesn't understand this. And it's why you're watching investors now completely panicked, because they're saying there isn't even a group of people in the room coming up with this formula or coming up with these negotiations. Never forget, the reason Peter Navarro, who believes in these protectionist tariffs, the reason he ended up in the Trump universe is because Jared Kushner did an Amazon search looking for anyone out there whose beliefs were aligned with Donald Trump's views on tariffs. And the one person he plucked from obscurity was Peter Navarro, who is now at the center of all of this.
My Greek isn't good enough to know that formula was bonkers from the beginning. My math isn't good enough. But Scott Bessent knows that it was. And I think that that's a huge problem here as well, that Peter Navarro introduced that, and there are people around the president who would recognize the fact that that formula wasn't what the White House, again, promised that they were going to do when it came to these reciprocal tariffs. And I think that's something that bears observation, the fact that that and this is what they came up with. And we all saw the president hold that thick ream of paper when he was in the Rose Garden. This is our extensive report. We know now that it didn't have the kind of due diligence and execution that we were promised at the beginning. And I think that that's a fundamental challenge for this administration, recognizing the fact this wasn't done the way they said they were going to do it.
But I guess my only follow-up question is there anyone in the business world who is surprised that a flimsy, bogus, unvetted, unverified, thoughtless piece of paper was the vehicle that destroyed the global economy?
Steph can jump in here, but I think the level of surprise was that he did this much based on that. The tariffs are as draconian as they are and as broad-based and wide-ranging because of how minimal they are.
Truthfully, they always knew this is who Donald Trump was, but they thought they bought him off. Because in the first term, he was thrilled to be surrounded by CEOs. He was thrilled to get invited to Steve Schwartzman's birthday party in Palm Beach. Now that Donald Trump is the super rich guy that he always wanted to be, and it's through crypto and it's through Truth Social, businesses that are completely flimsy. Now he's not actually listening to any of those people on Wall Street that kind of thought they had him in their back pocket. Now he's pulled a crazy Ivan, and they're going, how could this have happened? And I'll just leave you with this last point. Last week, I was speaking to someone close to Scott Bessent in this administration. And were they making an argument to me what Scott was negotiating and why any of this made sense? No. The last message they gave to me that they thought was important to tell me was a text that they got from a close pal of Donald Trump. And all the text said was, don't worry, Donald Trump, heart emoji, loves Scott. So this is and the reason this is important is that person should have been talking to me about why these policies matter. But no, the number one thing they need to make sure the media understands is that Scott's not going to get fired. Trump loves him. Or Howard's not going to get fired. They're BFFs. The country doesn't give a hoot who the president loves or doesn't love in the administration. The country wants to make sure he loves the 330 million Americans who live here.